we're going to have a look at using the brush and pencil tools in Adobe Illustrator. Let's jump straight in and create a new document, file new, and I'm just going to go A4 for mine. I'm going to set it to landscape, but again the choice is yours depending on who or what you're building for. And I'm going to grab a image and drag it in here to start with, but let's have a quick look at our workspace. So up in the Windows option here, workspace, I'm actually going to be using the new Essentials workspace. I've already got a few panels open. If you want to get it back to the basics, you can click on Essentials and then go to Reset Essentials. That'll clear everything up into stock standard mode. If you are familiar with Adobe Illustrator and are used to the Essentials Classic, it is still there, and you'll notice there's a lot more options in our tool panel, and our properties panel is here and up here as well. Adobe kind of went, this is getting a little bit out of control. There's a lot of pop-ups and stuff, and it can get really cluttered after a while, and try to dig around for tools that you may never use. So they came up and said, well, let's set an Essentials workspace. Downside of this is you kind of need to know a little bit about Illustrator if you want to go finding your tools, particularly in your toolbar here. And what you can do is go to the three dots at the bottom of your toolbar here, go to Edit Toolbar, and you can start adding all these other tools in here, depending on what you're after. So scroll through them, and if you need to add things to them, like the flare tool for whatever reason, you can add that to your toolbar, or you can nest it inside an existing tool there as well. So you can do that. But you know, for me, I don't really need all of that at the moment, so I'm just going to leave it. All right. Quick shout out to our old friend the pen tool. I'm not going to be using the pen tool, or might on a couple occasions, but for the most part, do get to know the pen tool for creating images in Illustrator. It is still a mainstay for design. It allows absolute control for your lines, so shout out to that. But we are going to be looking at these tools here: paintbrush tool, blob brush, and the pencil tool. First of all, let's have a look at the pencil tool and the paintbrush tool. They are very similar. The key difference is the pencil tool will essentially create a line, and let's select the pencil tool, shortcut N. Let's go over to our properties panel here and have a quick look, and we've got the appearance, which is fill, stroke, and we've also got opacity here. So I'm going to just create a line, and there it is there. Nothing too exciting about that. We do have options on adjusting the stroke, like so. There's our stroke width, and if I do click on the stroke panel, it will actually bring up some more options as well. So in this case, it is an open shape, it's just a line. So we do have the option of changing the caps on this. You can see we can go from a rounded cap to a squared out cap that's going to jut out, and we can have it butted in towards that last anchor point. If there are any corners in there, we can change the corners of that. Now this one doesn't have any corners, but to give you an example, I am going to use the pen tool. In this case, I'm going to go P for pen tool, and I'm going to create something that does have some corners, so you can see the difference. Enter or return to close that. Grab the stroke option there, and we can see we can start curving out. Zoom in for that. Z for zoom, and let's select that shape again, and stroke, and we can change the corners so that they either curve in, poke out, or miter out as well. So a few options there in the stroke panel. You can also go to window and stroke and bring that panel up as a freestanding one. So it does come in handy. I usually recommend if you do open that, it doesn't give much information for some reason, but if you've got a little swizzle down option here, you can choose what you're going to see there. Very hard to see, or you can go to the three lines here and go show options, and it's going to show you everything there as well. Alright, so there is our pencil tool. If you double click on the pencil tool, again, there it is, N, or the pen or the brush tool, if you double click on that, it will bring up the pencil tool options here, and we've got a few options that we really need to look at. A lot of these are going to be mirrored in the brush tool, with a couple of exceptions. The very first is the fidelity, and if you ramp this up to smooth, and let's go OK, and I'm going to go N for my pencil tool and draw a line, and there it is there. It's showing the anchor points. Let's delete these other ones so we've got something to compare it to, and I'm going to go N for pencil tool again, double click, and let's change that from smooth to accurate. And I'm going to draw something similar, and then some jaggedy ones at the base. And what you're going to see is if we select both of those, the one at the bottom with smooth has got a lot fewer anchor points, and it's got a lot nice, cleaner, smoother line to it. So there it is there. Of course, check those corners, and your stroke alignment, stuff like that. So that is the pencil tool, but let's check some of these other options. So you do have the option of adding a fill to the pencil stroke. You do have this with the brush as well, and essentially what that's going to do is if you click that on, you can actually go to your fill option here, and as you start drawing, it will start filling in a color. You've got an option key toggle smooth tool as well, and close path when ends are within 15 pixels. So this is something that the brush tool or paintbrush tool does not have. You can actually close a shape using the pencil tool, whereas the brush tool will only give you essentially brush strokes. You also have an option for editing selected paths. So I'm going to have tick on edit selected paths. I'm going to have close paths when ends are within there, and keep selected and fill new pencil strokes. I'm going to set this about halfway and hit OK. Alright, I'm going to delete what we've got here, and once again N for pencil tool, and I'm going to start drawing my shape. As I'm drawing it, actually I'm going to undo that. Sorry, I forgot to add my fill color. Let's add a fill color. Let's just go with a green over here. And as I start drawing this, if I let go, sorry, it hasn't got the fill on there again. Let's try that once more. One of the issues with working on a Wacom is sometimes it doesn't click correctly. There we go, jumped onto my mouse, and it's starting to fill in that color. Now, because I have these options ticked on, keep selected, you can see it's still selected. Fill, great, it's added a green fill there. Close paths when ends are within 15, yes, we'll do that when it gets close, we'll close that path, but we've also got edit selected paths on. And what I'm going to do is with my pencil tool, as I get close to that point, you can see this little backslash image appears, and that means it should connect on to my line. But if I want to edit my line, I can just go where my existing one is, and you can see I can start changing that out. Alright, so let's continue that line. I'm going to move it towards the end here, and as I get close, and you might have to look really close, you'll see a little circle appears below that pencil, and if I let go, that should theoretically close my line. Now I'm going to use Z for zoom just to check that, because if it's not a closed line I might run into some issues later on. And I'm going to press the Shift and Y key. Sorry. Using the wrong tools. Command Y, there it is there. Command or Control Y, not Shift and Y. That will give me a wireframe view, and let's go with our zoom tool. I just want to make sure that where I did, and that looks like that's joint up there, so if it is missing, it's not going to, at this point I'm not really too concerned. So Command Y or Control Y, let's bring that up. So there's my weird shape there. So do think what you want with that. The other thing I want to show you is that with the pencil tool you do have the option of adding a profile to it, so we can actually add a little bit of zhuzh to this, and let's draw in our line there. I'm going to turn off my options for fill and clothes. I can leave that, and edit and hit OK. There we go. So now I can draw a line, and I can change this from uniform, and I can add a little swoosh to that. So there's a few selected in here, and you can actually make your own as well. And this could be really good for adjusting and changing and adding a bit of style to it. So the pencil tool is fairly simple in that sense. You can actually add brush strokes to it, but I do recommend that if you add brush strokes to it, that you do use the actual brush tool. So to give you a quick idea from there, if I go into the width profile here, there it is there, you'll notice there aren't any actual brush options here. If I do go to the brush tool, B for brush, and we start drawing, you'll notice that that stroke profile has kind of disappeared and in favor of an actual brush stroke, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The thing that the brush tool doesn't have is it cannot close that shape, and it doesn't have a smoothing option on that. But other than that, that is mostly accurate. All right, let's have a quick look at what we can do with the brush tool itself. So brush tool, here it is here, and I can increase or decrease the brush size using my square brackets. Now please note that some brushes behave differently to others. Some brushes will have an option of changing things up, some will not, and it's kind of important to sort of be aware of that for when it does go wrong. It may be a brush selection issue. So I'm going to open up my brush panel window, brushes, there it is there. Now I've got my stroke panel still open as well. Let's leave that as well, and let's have a look at our brush panel over here, left hand one. Brush tool selected, double click on that, you'll notice that we do have the options: editing the selected path that we looked before, keep selected, new fill brush strokes. I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to have those unticked. I'm just going to allow for me more free form. Alright, let's have a look. We got some round ovals, we got some calligraphic brushes, we got a mob, we got denim. If we draw a brush stroke, I'm going to throw a few in there. There's a round one, there's an oval one. Now check out these little markers here, and if you double click on that, it's going to say calligraphic brush. Alright, so let's leave that for now. So I've got a calligraphic brush here, and if we double click on this one, this is an art brush. So let's do an art brush, which is in this case the charcoal feather. There it is there. And let's have a look at the mop brush. You can see this little symbol here. Double click. This is a bristle brush. Okay. And this one here, this is denim seam. Click on that. This is a pattern brush. Let's hit OK. So there are different types of brushes, and I've selected 4 of the main. I'm going to Command A, select all of those. Now we can adjust the stroke on these in our properties panel, and I'm going to go to the stroke panel here, much like we did with the pencil tool, and I'm going to change this to one of our funky variations. So let's change the width profile to something like that. What you're going to see is some of the brushes will change. So let's do it again. Let's do this flat one. Alright, this one here changed. So that was the charcoal brush, which was an art brush, and because I've got them all selected, they're all changing. This one here, which is the mop brush, did not change, and that is a bristle brush. This one here that did change is the denim one, which is a pattern brush, and this one here, which is a calligraphic brush, did not change. So these two did not change, these two did. Let's try and grab the whole thing instead of just one of the anchor points. So take that into consideration. If you are trying to add a profile to your brushes, some will take a profile and some will not. The calligraphic brush is one of those that will not, as is this one here, the mop brush, which is a bristle brush. So if you are trying to get that to work with getting like a nice tapered edge, it simply won't work. So be cautious of that. If we do go with, with whatever, do try to. Now, library. There is a library option here, and we do have some brushes in here. We've got some artistic calligraphic brushes, we've got some ink, we've got some borders, we've got all sorts of stuff. So do have a dig around there, but just be cautious, be aware that some will not allow this profile option. Now, in saying that, we do have a lot of other funky options that we can do in there. So I'm going to delete those. I'm going to go with one of my calligraphic brushes here. So this might sound a bit weird, but let's see what we can do with that. So there's my basic brush, and I'm going to double click in the little icon here, double click, and this is going to open up my options for that brush. So this little square icon here, and there's the name of it. You can rename it if you want. We've got some options on changing the angle of it. Now it's a round brush, so that's not really going to matter, but we can change it to a different shape if we want. And you can see it's actually live acting right there. And we can, there's our roundness option, does the same thing. And we've also got the option of ramping the size. Now where this gets really fun is we can actually change this to things like the tilt or the bearing for the angle. That might change it up a little bit. Roundness, let's keep that fixed, but the size is one I usually recommend. I'm going to set this to pressure. So if you are working from a a stylus Wacom, for example, you can actually have pressure sensitivity on your brushes. You just need to open up and say, yes, I want pressure on that. And you do need to go to variation and choose the variation. And you can see up in this panel here, this is going to adjust how much of a variation that is. So there it is there. And I'm going to hit OK. You can choose, when you hit OK, you can either leave the strokes as they are or apply it to them. I'm going to hit apply. And now let's see what we've got. So now I'm going to do a light stroke, light touch with the Wacom, that's that. Let's do a heavy stroke right there. So you can see we can start getting some variation to that. Adjust your brush size down, and nice. So you can actually get a little bit of pizzazz with your brushes as well. I'm going to select all those and delete. I'm going to make my own brush to give you an idea how quick and easy that is. I'm going to switch to my pen tool at the moment, and I'm going to click, and I'm just going to hold down shift and just create a straight line. That was a terrible straight line, and hit enter. Alright, let's ramp this stroke up a little bit so we can see what's going on, and why not, let's zoom in. Alright, I'm just going to try and square that off a little bit. That is the worst straight line in the history of straight lines. I seem to be struggling with the Wacom to draw, not create a curve, so I'm going to switch to my mouse. There it is, hit enter. Alright, so here's my brush, my straight line. I might want to change the ends of this, so the cap, so maybe I want a curve cap or something like that, but it's really at the moment it's not that fun. Check out this tool here, it's the width tool, shift W, there it is. If you don't see it there, you may need to dig around for it in here, but I think it's there by default. And what this is going to allow me to do is go over a stroke, and I can actually start changing this out. So I can start moving this around and click and drag, and you can create all sorts of weird and wonderful shapes for this. So let's get a little bit crazy with this, and let's taper that in. So great, so that's a really interesting shape. I'm going to go back to my move tool there, and I can actually create this as a brush, so I can grab that. Now it could be anything, it could be any shape that you want, and I'm going to drag and drop this into my brushes here. I want this to be an art brush, so I'm going to go art brush, hit OK, and I'm going to set the pressure there as well. Now this can take a little bit of tweaking, so the pressure is going to be your pen pressure, and you've got your adjustments here. So this is over here, if you hover and hold it, this is going to be your minimum size, and this one is going to be your maximum size. So at the moment I'll leave that as is. You've got some scaling options to stretch to fit the length, so from beginning to end of your stroke, so if it's a long squiggly line, or is it going to scale accordingly. So it's a bit hard to explain that without literally doing it, but do play that. The rest of this I'm going to leave. You can change the direction, the starting and end point of your brush, so if I want it to end with a nice little point there, I can switch that, and let's try that out. So let's delete that shape, and I'm going to go B for brush. There's my art brush. I might just name it to Spiky 1. Great, let's give it a go, and there it is there. Very weird and wonderful brush, but let's change a few of the options. So at the moment it's really not working as far as getting that width for the pen pressure, so I'm going to double click on that. Now it does say pressure yes. I'm going to lower that minimum size down. Let's see if that makes a difference, and let's go to apply to strokes and see how that works. Alright, that seems to be working alright. So now I'm doing a light line here, and it seems to be working really small. If I press harder with the Wacom, you can see you get a nice thick line. And as you can see, I'm doing a variation in line. Let's do it softly, and then towards the end let's do jagged, hard. See how that looks. Nice. Alright, so I think that's kind of a nice little fun brush if you want to do some stylistic brushes to play around with. Please note the width tool and will allow you to adjust the width of these after you've drawn them, so you can get some really nice little tapers on that. And likewise, if you are using something really simple like a basic brush, and let's switch to a nice little basic brush like that, and you do go Shift W and grab the width tool for that. I'm going to grab those. Shift W. Let's grab that one. What I'm going to see, this is actually not going to work. Shift W, the width tool is not going to work on this one because it actually defaulted back to a calligraphic brush. So I'm just double clicking on basic, and I'm going to crank that out. The width of the stroke of that, Shift W, and now I can actually adjust that. So this width tool will not work on an actual calligraphic stroke. Alright,